Update. I, 39 male, found some old stuff about my wife, 37 female, and I don't know what to do. Original post. A bit of background. My wife and I, not legally married, but I don't like the term partner or girlfriend, are both in our late 30s. We've been together for 10 years, have a 2-year-old, and my wife is currently pregnant with another boy. For the most part, our relationship has been great. Like most couples, we have our ups and downs, but we're mostly good friends and great partners in life. However, there has always been a thing in our relationship that has been bothering me more in the last couple of months: our sex life. In the early years, everything was fine. We weren't an overly sexual couple, but we had sex a few times a week, and I was content with that. About 3 years into our relationship, we had been living together for a while and started trying for a baby. Unfortunately, we weren't having much success, so we went to the doctor. Over the next few years, our sex life changed. It became mechanical. Scheduled times, specific positions, endless tests, and month after month of disappointment. To be honest, it stopped being fun. We then went through 2 cycles of IVF, both of which were unsuccessful. At this point, we were doing it maybe once or twice a month. Thankfully, we eventually got pregnant naturally, and we were over the moon. However, there was a lot of stress since we had lost a baby girl before. During that time, I didn't push for it, and I believe we only had it a couple of times. When our son was born, well, most of you know how newborns are. Between work, stress, sleepless nights, and lack of opportunity, we didn't have sex at all during that first year. After that, we started again, but I always felt like it was more of a duty for my wife. I had to spend 1 or 2 weeks slowly seducing her until she eventually got in the mood. Thankfully, we got pregnant again a few months ago, and since then, our sex life has stopped completely. I've tried initiating a couple of times, but my wife always says she's not in the mood, too tired, or too pregnant. I don't want to be an a-hole, so I back off and stopped trying. Everything was fine. I had accepted that it was off the table for the next few months, but then something happened last month that made me rethink everything. Our son still wakes up a lot during the night, and most nights, my wife sleeps with him. Almost like clockwork, at 5 a.m., he wakes up for good and wants to play or watch cartoons. I usually take care of him while my wife sleeps for a couple more hours. Before Christmas, I gave my wife a new phone and gave her old one to our son to watch cartoons. I know he shouldn't, but it helps. One morning, I grabbed the phone, opened Google, and saw the recently visited sites on the homepage. One of them was an adult site. I knew it wasn't me or my son, so I realized it had to be my wife. Her Google account was still linked to the old phone, meaning it had synced from her new one. At first, I just laughed, deleted the site from the recent history, and moved on. I didn't think much of it. Maybe a friend told her about a specific video, or maybe she got horny and didn't want to bother me. A couple of days later, the same thing happened. This time, curiosity got the best of me, and I checked her browser history. I found out that she was watching 2 or 3 times a week after I went to bed early. I wasn't mad, just a bit disappointed. Still, I tried to be understanding. Maybe she doesn't feel sexy, doesn't have the energy for it, and relieves herself this way. I didn't say anything, but the thought stayed in my mind. I started wondering if I had gained too much weight, and if she was no longer attracted to me. Then, I did something I'm ashamed of. Since her account was still linked to that phone, so were her social media accounts. I went down a rabbit hole. My worst fear was that she was having an affair, but I didn't find any recent chats or messages from any new guys. Out of curiosity, I searched my name. As expected, a lot of results appeared, but one message stood out. OP is kind of ugly, but I like him. I opened the chat, and it was from a conversation with a friend from 10 years ago, when we first met and were still just friends. I read a few more messages, and it was like a punch to the gut. She was telling her friend that I was ugly, that I didn't have a great body like Ben, but that I was a nice guy. I searched for who Ben was and discovered he was a guy she had been with for a few months before me. Before him, she was with her official ex. When we started dating, she told me she had been single for 2 years. Now, I've discovered that in the 12 months before me, she was with at least 2 guys. I also checked the chats with Ben and her ex and found that she was still talking to them during the first 2 to 3 years of our relationship. To be fair, the conversations weren't anything crazy, but maybe it's just my head messing with me. There were hints of flirting here and there. Another thing that bothers me is how different she seemed in those chats. She was much more sexual than she has ever been with me. She talked about all the marathons she had, the positions she tried, and other stuff. Things she told me were completely off limits. Maybe it's just girl talk. I don't know. With all of this, my self-esteem has plummeted. I feel ugly, unattractive, betrayed, and to be honest, used. These past few weeks, I've been trying to be alone as much as possible. I've been staying late at work, waking up in the middle of the night, and moving to the sofa, just avoiding everything. I really don't know what I'm going to do. The only silver lining in all of this is that I've suddenly felt the urge to get back in shape. I've been hitting the gym more often. Thanks for taking the time to read this. What do I do now? Now for the top advice before reading the update. It's hurtful to know how your significant other viewed you before they got to know you. So many problems with this relationship. 10 years, 2 kids, wife, but unmarried. How do people get this deep into life without making a firm commitment to each other? There is commitment. In our country, after living together for 2 years, you have the same rights as married couples. We aren't religious at all, so we never felt the urge to do it. There were always better things to spend the money on. Do you know how expensive IVF treatments are? I really don't understand why there is seemingly zero empathy for you here. I am so sorry. You met her, got to know her, and built a life together, all while believing the information she shared with you was truthful. Now you're discovering that parts of her past were withheld, and her initial impression of you wasn't what you thought. Of course that hurts. If I were you, I'd go through the entire scenario in my head, how you found out, how you got access to the phone, what exactly you uncovered. The evidence is there. She didn't betray you in the present. There was no actual break in trust. But there is a break in confidence, and that's something you need to acknowledge. I'd tell her that directly, or if you're not ready, see a therapist for yourself without telling her. Either way, you need to process this instead of just hitting the gym and avoiding the real issue. Exactly. I don't think I've ever seen so many negative, unsympathetic, and ignorant comments here. OP built the last 10 years with her, only to now discover that he was the safe choice, the person she settled for. That would make anyone feel terrible. No one deserves to feel like a second pick. If he still wants to be with her, I don't blame him. But people telling him to just deal with it for the sake of the kids are being just as cruel. Sure, the past is in the past, and people do change, but that doesn't mean it doesn't hurt to see the truth now. Now for the update. First, I want to thank everyone who commented and messaged me. While I haven't been able to reply to most of you, I have read everything. I just wasn't in a great place mentally. The day I made my original post, and the day after, I was feeling especially down. My partner noticed and kept asking what was wrong. That night, after our son went to sleep, she asked again, and I could no longer hold it in. I told her what I had done and what I had found. It wasn't pretty. She immediately started crying and yelling at me for going through her phone, which I understand. However, she never once addressed what I had actually found, only how mad and disappointed she was in me for invading her privacy. Since she's pregnant and was getting stressed, I didn't push the issue further. She went to bed, and I stayed on the couch. The next 24 hours, she didn't speak to me at all. The following night, I decided to push the issue again and told her we needed to talk. She agreed. What she told me, I assume she thought it would be comforting, was far from it. Long story short, she admitted that after breaking up with her long-term ex-boyfriend, which I already knew about, she went through a phase of exploration. She had multiple short-term relationships and casual encounters, but chose not to tell me because she knew how society views that kind of behavior. She then told me that after breaking up with the last guy, the one I saw in the messages, she decided she was done playing around and wanted to settle down. I asked her outright, "Was I just the guy you settled for?" She responded, "No, you were much better than those guys. You had your life on track, you had goals, and you were financially secure." I pushed further and asked, "If I wasn't stable, would you have ever been interested in me?" She hesitated and then admitted, "Probably not." She started crying again and confessed that, although she loves me, she has never been physically attracted to me in the same way she was to other men. After all the struggles we had trying to conceive, sex had become more of a task than something pleasurable. I then asked why she had continued talking to those guys for years into our relationship. She said it was never romantic, just something to boost her confidence. She insisted she never cheated on me, but it was nice to feel desired. At that point, I felt like I was dying inside, but I kept a straight face. She asked me to come to bed with her, but I told her I needed time to process everything, and I stayed on the couch again. I didn't sleep at all that night, and at some point, I accepted that the person I fell in love with was just an illusion. The next morning, I went to work but also scheduled a meeting with my family lawyer. I was upfront with him, explaining that I wasn't sure what I wanted to do yet, but I needed to understand my financial options and responsibilities. He explained that, by default, our country's laws assign 50-50 co-parenting, unless there's violence or a mutual agreement otherwise. If both parents are working, there are no financial obligations toward each other. For our unborn child, the court would likely mandate that the baby stays with the mother for the first 6 months, but I would have visiting rights, and after that, 50-50 co-parenting would be expected. Regarding finances, since we've mostly kept separate bank accounts and assets, we wouldn't have to split them. However, we would need to split the house and cars unless one of us buys the other out. This is where I would take a hit, as I had paid for most of it, but legally, everything would be divided 50-50. That night, I worked late, slept on the couch again, and before leaving for work the next morning, I told my partner that I needed some space and would be staying at a hotel for a few days. During this time, she kept calling and texting, but I only responded to say we would talk when I was ready. To be honest, I just needed time alone, to drink, to sleep, and to process everything. When I came back home a few days later, we had another serious conversation. I told her that I knew what I did was wrong. Going through her phone wasn't okay. I also reassured her that I had no issue with her having had a fun phase before we met. But I admitted that I was deeply hurt by knowing I was just a stable, responsible choice, not someone she was genuinely attracted to. I also told her that I hadn't decided what I was going to do yet, but for now, I didn't see her as my loving partner anymore. However, if she was open to it, I was willing to try counseling and see where things went. So, that's where we are now. We've had 2 therapy sessions so far, but honestly, they haven't helped much. We'll continue, but I don't know if it will make a difference. My partner has been trying to be more affectionate and has initiated sex a few times, but I've declined, telling her I'm not ready. Meanwhile, I've been spending more time away from home, going to the gym, spending quality time with my son, and going out to dinner with friends and colleagues. I still love my partner, but I can't look at her the same way anymore. Our newborn is due in early April, and I know that will be the ultimate test for our relationship. But to be completely honest, at this moment, I'm slowly accepting that we might be done. Thanks again to everyone for your messages and kind words. I'm sorry, man. This one truly sucks. Your relationship has been a lie. For the rest of your life, you'll live knowing that the person you're sleeping with is doing it out of duty because she feels obligated, not because she desires you. Man, you're 39. You've still got half your life left. Bite the bullet and cut your losses. Don't raise children in a miserable home because that misery will trickle down to them. You both deserve happy relationships. Your partner has a track record of lying and omitting things, and you can't rebuild on that because the foundation was never genuine. The grass isn't always greener, but in rare cases like yours, it certainly will be. Literally this. I'm honestly so irritated reading about people who get with others because they see them as the safe option. It's vile. They're literally stealing away a potential lifetime of happiness from someone because they are selfish. OP, you deserve so much more than what your wife has given you. She's a selfish liar. Don't basically end your life of joy just to stay with her and be miserable. Good luck. It always amazes me when a significant other is perfectly fine lying, cheating, and emotionally abusing their significant other by carrying on affairs, and make no mistake, her continuing to talk to her exes were emotional affairs, plural. And then they have the audacity to say going through their phone is a line that shouldn't be crossed. Really? She's more upset about how you found out the truth than the fact she is actually using you for financial security. With 2 young children, soon, I agree counseling should be legitimately attempted prior to splitting up, but it can only maybe work if she faces and shows true remorse for what she's done. She trapped you in a near sexless marriage because she's a selfish person. It is possible to fall in true love with someone you're not physically attracted to. I've done it, but she didn't even attempt to. She simply used you like an emotional and financial ATM. She needs to admit to this and put in the work to change, and even then, I fear that won't be enough. In the meantime, keep hitting the gym, socializing with friends, spending that quality time with your son, and finding your joy separate from her. Thank you. At this point, I'm still sad and hurt, but I'm not depressed, which is great. I can see a light at the end of the tunnel, either with or without her. I just want to minimize whatever trauma this brings to my kid. Last story. I'm 37 female seriously considering ending my engagement and relationship to my fiancé 36 male. I went out with my fiancé on Valentine's Day. My gift was going to an event called Martini Wars. I think it was something he found last minute on Eventbrite. It was a battle between bartenders. And as you can imagine, there was a lot of drinking. Things were going fine until the ride home. In the Uber, his tongue was hanging out of his mouth, his eyes were rolling back, and his head was bobbing back and forth. I was afraid he was going to vomit in the car, so I kept the windows down and tried to comfort him. We made it home fine, but then he became very obstinate. He refused to listen to me. He was still borderline sick, so I kept telling him to move to the toilet, but he wouldn't budge from the spot where he was in the bathroom. Then he vomited all over the floor. I became upset at how unnecessarily defiant he was being. At some point, he became angry and showed me a side of him I had never seen in the 5 years we've been together. He began screaming at me and didn't back down. I was in an abusive relationship before, and it triggered the worst memory of that experience. I begged and pleaded with him to stop yelling, but he didn't. Eventually, he left the room and I took the opportunity to book a hotel for the night. I woke up in the hotel to a text from him saying that he didn't remember anything but was very sorry. I stayed away from him all weekend. Since he's returned home, he has done nothing to make amends for his actions. I told him the engagement was off, and he accepted it without protest. He avoids me around the house and doesn't try to connect with me. The worst part is that Wednesday nights are supposed to be our date nights. Yesterday, he told me he was going out with his friend and asked if I wanted to join. I feel like he doesn't even care how much he hurt me and doesn't want to fight for the relationship. I know I'm presenting only my side, but I'm wondering if this relationship is salvageable. If you were in his shoes, what steps would you take to show that you were serious about the fact that you hurt your fiancé? So your gift was an event he wanted to go to. Then he got wasted, screamed at you for trying to help him and isn't doing anything to apologize or fix this? Sounds like he doesn't think he really did anything wrong and believes you overreacted, which you didn't. I don't think he's taking you ending the engagement seriously. He probably assumes there's no way you'd actually leave him. You need to make it permanent. He showed complete disregard for you and won't apologize, which tells you exactly what kind of life you'll have with him. A verbally abusive man who never takes responsibility. Is that what you want? Because if you accept his behavior, it will only get worse. I haven't even addressed the crappy Valentine's gift. No flowers, no card, just copious amounts of drinking. But yeah, this weekend has been eye-opening. I think I'm just in shock because my whole life got uprooted in one night like that. If I were him, my first step would be a sincere apology. The next would be trying to find out exactly what I had done or said and asking how I could make amends. He has done none of the above, so it's pretty clear what he thinks of you, and it obviously isn't very much. I would begin the process of separating your lives and moving on. It's hard, I know, but you shouldn't have to live in fear of his next breakdown. You have the right to live and enjoy your life without fear. My husband behaved like this once. He was under a lot of stress, and we'd had far too much to drink that night. I had to call the police because he was so belligerent that I was frightened. The next day, my husband moved out for 2 weeks. He waited until I felt safe enough to invite him back. He got himself into a counseling program and hasn't had a drink since that night. He worked through a lot of underlying emotional issues that fueled the incident and has abstained from alcohol ever since. Anything less than that, I would have left him.